Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Education Program Perceptions Report presentation. My name is Maria Cruz. I'm a Communications and Outreach Manager in the Community Engagement Department. And here with me today to present the report are Ty Flanagan and Fahid Masroor, Education Program Managers, Nicole Saad, Education Specialist, Van Verscho, Community Programs Lead, and we have a few other people joining us on the call. Can you please introduce yourselves? Marty, do you want to start?
I'm Marty Johnson, and I'm the Program Officer for Project Grants.
So maybe I'll go next and introduce a little bit about the topic we'll be discussing today and the team members from the education team. My name is Zahid. I will be moderating this morning's presentation. And today we'll be discussing the findings that we've had since we've been running our survey to learn from the community and other stakeholders regarding perceptions of what Wikipedia education programs are all about and how the education team can better serve the education part of the movement. Me personally, my focus points are the Americas and Western Europe, and I'd like Ty to introduce himself next.
Sure, I'm Ty. I lead the education team with Nicole and Vahid, and I'll be taking notes today. And I'm really excited to share the findings with you and see what direction we're going to head in the future. And you may know me if you're in the Middle East and Africa, because those are my typical points of contact.
Great. Next, I'd like to introduce Nicole, who will actually lead the conversation. Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the team, and then take the floor?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole. I am an education program manager on the education team, and I led this research last year. I'm the primary focal point for Asia, as a lot of you probably know. And so today I'm going to be presenting to you the research that we did, the results that came out of that research, and what we plan to do going forward. So from now, I'm going to start sharing a slide deck with you and my screen, right, Maria? I start to share my screen first. Yeah, and then we'll be going through what we found, what we're gonna do, and then I will open the floor to some questions. So the first thing I want to say is that the research definitely proved that Wikipedia belongs in education. This has been a tagline for the education program for quite some time, and it's something that holds. We know this. But actually, the scope is larger than this. It's not just the Wikipedia belongs in education, it's the Wikimedia movement belongs in education. And this was one of the reasons why we needed to do this research. And before we start, let's just talk a little bit briefly about what is the Wikipedia education program. So the program specifically was initially a pilot called the Public Policy Initiative, but that wasn't the only education thing happening in the movement. And now we support projects all over the world and at all levels of the education and at all levels of education. So a main reason for doing this research was to understand how we can better communicate what we do and what is the value of this relationship between the Wikimedia movement and the education sector to various audiences and stakeholders. And furthermore, why? Our education portal has cluttered pages. There are pages that are out of date, like this page you see here. And we haven't really developed processes and mechanisms for making sure what we have is streamlined and up to date and easily usable by all of our audiences. And not everything that we have available on our portal, not the materials and resources that we have there are representative of what's happening in the movement now. So as you can see from this clip from the case studies page, the case studies that we currently have are mostly based in North America, mostly at the higher education level, and it's just not representative of what's going on around the world between Wikimedia projects and at the education sector. So really, we set out to answer 4 questions. The first question was, how do stakeholders within the Wikimedia movement perceive the Wikipedia education program and its role? The second is, what is the perceived value of Wikipedia among known stakeholders within the field of education? How do program leaders perceive the support provided by the education team? And does the current branding of the Wikipedia education program adequately represent what the education team does or should do for Wikipedia and education? We used mixed methods, and we did that through a Qualtrics survey and with interviews with affiliates from around the world. The survey was global. More than 200 people took the survey, and thanks to volunteers, it was translated into 9 additional languages other than English. And we had people take the survey from all of our different stakeholder groups. And one interesting thing to point out here is that because people could select all that apply, you could be a contributor, you could also be a program leader, you could also be an educator and a staff at the same time. And that's why you see the group that says, I contribute to Wikimedia Projects Online as the largest group. So what did we discover from this research? First, while stakeholders are aware of the Wikipedia education program and the education team at the Wikimedia Foundation, there's not a consensus about what Wikipedia and education means for the Wikimedia movement. And you can see this through some of the questions like, what should the education team be prioritizing? And what is the value of using Wikimedia projects in education? There isn't really a clear idea about what this means for the movement. And when we get to the recommendation section, this will come up. So first, were our stakeholders aware of the education team? And you can see primarily that people were aware. This is not surprising since most of the people who took the survey were already aware of the education team. This is not necessarily globally representative. Could somebody mute their microphone because I'm getting feedback? Thank you. So back to the question, sorry. Are you aware of the education team? This is not globally representative, but it is representative of those who took the survey throughout all of our different stakeholder groups. And the interesting finding here is that you can see that 19% of foundation staff are unaware of the education team. And for us, this is a problem because it might limit what we can collaborate with other teams at the foundation. The other group that had a little bit larger percentage of unaware were educators. And that's not so surprising. The next question I want to discuss a little bit more is, I understand the goals of the Wikimedia movement. So those who took the survey could answer from strongly agree to strongly disagree or no opinion to this question. And you can see that there are various levels of understanding among the different stakeholder groups. But generally, people think that they do understand the goals of the education program. Here you can see again that staff are the ones who stated that they either strongly disagree or somewhat disagree that they understand the goals of the educational goals of the Wikimedia movement. And one of the reasons for this is, like I said before, we haven't really articulated what are the educational goals of the Wikimedia movement. Another thing that we found was that the goals and activities of the education team are not well understood. There's a lack of awareness among internal stakeholders like the WMF staff that hinders potential collaborations that could benefit the movement. So when you get to the question, I value Wikipedia and education globally, you have a vast majority of respondees that state, yes, I value Wikipedia and education globally. They strongly agree with that statement. But when you get to the idea of what does the education team do at the foundation, you have widely varying answers. So here you can see that 20% of people think that we support educators around the world to use Wikimedia projects. Another 18% think that we provide tools and resources. 17% think that we advocate for the value of Wikipedia in education. And 10% think that we work to increase the number of editors through converting students into Wikimedians. And this is interesting because our thesis is actually that it's not easy to convert students into Wikimedians. And what we do is more focus on supporting affiliates to support educators, because when educators engage their students in editing Wikipedia in the classroom and other Wikimedia projects, you get better content on various wikis, and at the same time, students learn very vital skills for the 21st century. So these were some interesting findings that, again, will come up during the recommendation section. But when we get to the next slide, you'll see that when people responded, what should we be doing? So the question was, if the education team at the Wikimedia Foundation only had the capacity to focus on 2 of these activities, what should they prioritize? And you see, most people thought we should focus on supporting educators around the world use Wikimedia projects in diverse educational settings. 25% selected that one. And 22% selected that we should provide educators with professional development, curriculum, and lesson plans about using Wikimedia projects for classroom learning. And that's interesting because that hasn't been our focus in the past. And it's something we've been talking about as a team that we might be able to do more with, is providing that kind of support to educators specifically. But then you have this 14% that wants us to work to increase the number of editors through converting students into Wikimedians. And our previous theory of change stated that we believe that Wikimedians are born and not made, and that it's more efficient to focus on supporting educators who can work with students semester after semester than it is to focus specifically on converting students into Wikimedians. So these were some really interesting findings, and you can dig more deeply into the data if you actually read the report. But I wanted to highlight some of these data points because they will feed into the recommendations that we've outlined. And so now I'd like to shift into more external stakeholders like educators, and specifically the educators who are exposed to using Wikimedia projects in the classroom. We found through the research that they do find value in it. So you can see the answer to this question. I see value in using Wikipedia in the classroom. Educators overwhelmingly responded that they agree, that they do see value in using Wikipedia in the classroom. And this goes to show that educators who are exposed to the power of using Wikimedia projects in the classroom do understand that it helps their students to achieve the skills they need to be successful in the 21st century. And at the same time, they contribute to a global movement. So the educators who are exposed to that do find value in it. And so when we get to how they think using Wikimedia projects in the classroom benefits the field of education, most of them think that it helps students achieve vital skills and that it provides free educational resources. Educators do not tell their students to avoid reading Wikipedia articles and encourage them to contribute. Again, these are educators who are exposed to using Wikimedia projects in the classroom. But still, those who do find that they don't discourage students from actually even reading Wikipedia. So you can see one of the text responses in the survey from an educator said, "I certainly do not tell students to avoid Wikipedia. There are pages with good information and there are pages with worse ones, but students and readers with good skills can tell those apart and, of course, make the pages better." And this feeds into the other idea that educators said that using Wikimedia projects in the classroom helps students achieve vital skills. And one of those skills is information literacy. When you take part in a Wikipedia education program as a student, you learn how to tell the difference between good information and information that needs more citations or information that can be edited. We found that educators need more support with pedagogical resources that link Wikimedia projects with student learning outcomes. And we can see this in some of the questions that asked, what kind of support do you need? So here you can see that 19% of respondents said that they would like curriculum or syllabi as support from the education team. You see training and tutorials being a large percentage point. And then when you get to the other question, what resources do you want to see added or revised? Here you see again, a large percentage say syllabi or curricula. More people want case studies that show good examples of education programs being implemented around the world. So there's definitely room for improvement in what kind of resources that we provide to educators. And so now shifting again to what we found out about our branding and materials. We found that the current branding and materials used by the Wikipedia education program and the education team do not sufficiently represent the relationship between the Wikimedia movement and the education sector. We found that the portal is not utilized as often as it should be, and it is difficult for our stakeholders to find the resources that they need. And we also found that it is not as user-friendly to non-Wikimedians as it should be. Our visual identity also needs to be revised to be more welcoming, inspiring, and oriented towards education. So here you can see our current logo for the Wikipedia education program, which is a black square with white lettering. And one of the text responses about this logo says that the logo doesn't look branded or designed to me. I want something that says we are inspiring educators. And when you get to the question about the logo, what do you feel when you see this image? You find some very negative answers. So people said it was boring, ugly, outdated, even morbid, too formal, classic. There are fewer people that found good, joy, or happiness from looking at the image. And this tells us that we need to revise some of our branding materials. And here, this is a really important data point. When you think about how often do you visit the education portal and Outreach Wiki, 75% responded once a month or less. And that once a month is usually to read the monthly newsletter. So if our portal was as effective as it should be, if people were finding all the stuff they needed there, if they were able to connect with others, if they were able to learn what they needed to learn to implement education programs, they would be visiting probably 2 to 3 times per month or 4 to 5 times per month, not just once a month. So this is a clear indication that we need to improve our education portal. And here you can see from one of our interviews with an affiliate that they said if any new students or educators go to the portal, it is not easy. We need something that can help initiate the newcomers. For me, a separate website for newcomers would be best. For me personally, I can find information from the portal, but I think for newcomers, they won't be able to find resources easily. And so now we're getting into what are we going to do about it. So here I'm going to describe to you our 3 recommendations, and then tell you a couple of ways you can get involved, and then I will open the floor for questions. So what are we going to do about it? First, we will improve communication both internally and externally about how using Wikimedia projects in education benefits the Wikimedia movement and contributes to global goals for education. We will do this through seeking out and creating opportunities to share impact and collaborate with internal stakeholders, and through developing communications materials and resources that make it easier for educators to become contributors by helping students edit Wikimedia projects in the classroom. Secondly, we will revise the scope and workflows of the education team in order to better align with the new movement strategy and support the diverse needs of stakeholders at scale. We'll do this through defining the relationship between the Wikimedia movement and the education sector, of course, in partnership with all of our stakeholders, including the community. We will align with the goals of the education team to the new movement strategy, and we will improve communications to potential partners who can help us achieve shared goals. And third, we will develop communications materials that are accurate, up-to-date, and user-friendly for non-Wikimedians. We'll do this through redesigning the logo and other branding materials, developing a portal for Wikimedia and education that is welcoming, inspiring, and informative. It should also be user-friendly for non-Wikimedians. and developing systems and workflows in partnership with other stakeholders that ensure the information we present is accurate and up to date. So how can you get involved with this? Right now, there are two ways. I'm sure in the future there will be more, and we will definitely communicate about those through our various channels such as Facebook, Twitter, and the newsletter. But for right now, you can write a case study. Alex Stinson and myself last year launched a case studies campaign, which we have this year revised. So you can click this link below once we share the slides. You can also just go to this link here. And you can write a case study there. You can also participate in some of the case study clinics we will be holding throughout the year at various movement events. And we will also be holding virtual case study clinics. And more information about those will be coming shortly. And secondly, you can join a working group. There will be more details to come. This is an idea that has just been initiated by our team. So if you want to participate in something like this, which would be getting involved with our team and looking at how we can revise our branding and materials to be more inclusive and to be more inspiring for educators, you can go to this link and sign up for updates. So now I will open the floor to questions, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much for this brief summary, Nicole. The link to the report itself was pasted in the chat, so you're welcome to access it if you want. And we also have a link on Wiki if you'd rather have that presentation. So I don't know if maybe Ty, you would like to make a comment regarding the ideas that were presented here, or if there are questions, we can start getting questions. I see Wojtek already.
I'm just typing away at notes, so I'll leave questions to the floor.
Great. So I see Wojtek that says that it seems there are many that are unaware of what the Wikimedia Foundation education team actually does. It would be cool to give us monthly updates on your work in the newsletter.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually in the newsletter, we've been posting a section of the newsletter that is from the team. So from time to time, you can also see some news that come directly from the team. And of course, on the discussion page, add your comments there, you're welcome. And there's also room in the conference if you want to partake of the video part of the conference as well. So maybe we can ask.
And let me also mention that this year I will be initiating office hours bi-monthly in different time zones. So if you have specific questions you'd like to ask about what we're working on, or if you'd like to get involved, or if you just want help with your education programs, you'll be able to come to office hours. I'll be communicating more about that through our various channels like Facebook, Twitter, and the newsletter once it's more solidified, but please look forward to that.
All right, so I can see Galib has.
Galib, would you like to unmute yourself and maybe voice this comment that you wrote so that people watching the stream can also hear you?
Hello, is it hearing?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, as per my comment, I have mentioned about that last 1 year I have actively working with the education team, but as per my personal view, I have analyzed that we have enriched our wiki education program in European and American universities. Such we have a lot of visiting scholars program. Beside this, we have some collaborations with university students and teacher. But I think we need to, as per my personal view, we need to focus on also Asian side, because last 6 months I have done a personal survey where I have seen that the in Asia, like the India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, we have many universities and where we can outreach our wiki education program mainly. last week, I have done a workshop in my university campus. Actually, I'm reading in IIUC, and in my electrical department, I have conducted workshop where I got a lot of potential outcomes from my friends that they are also interested in contributing in education. Like I have understand them about the wiki education program. So I think we should more focus on the education program to the universities, like universities, college. That's my view.
Thank you for that comment, Galib. The problem here is that we have a 3-person education team at the foundation, and we support programs around the world at various levels of education. So what we need actually is to work on the scope of work that we can provide the best type of support to all of our different stakeholders. And so we'll definitely keep your point in mind going forward, but it's not necessarily up to us that we just focus on institutions. We support affiliates, and if that makes sense in your context, then of course, that's what you should do. But we really want to support all of our stakeholders, especially with the type of communications materials that we're putting out into the world for you to use with your institutions. So that's really what this conversation is about the perception of the work of the education team at the foundation and how we can improve the materials and resources that we provide to you, to educators, and to others within the movement. I see here a question from Lee. What about educating communities and projects about education programs and how they can collaborate? Yeah, so advocacy was a major point. And that we would like to improve on. And you can see in the recommendations that we would like to improve how we advocate for education programs, both internally and externally. And so that will be a major focus going forward. For example, I'm dedicating 20% of my time both to internal and external advocacy. So I'll be able to work more closely with the community and with other stakeholders to develop those materials. They're not developed yet. This is just, we've got the research, we've got the data, and now we're working on what do we do.
Nicole, there's also a question from the chat regarding the dashboard. Were there any specific findings regarding the dashboard in the research?
Yes, so we found that program leaders do use the dashboard and do find it useful, but they don't use it as often as we would like them to, and it is not as useful as we would like it to be. So it's kind of in that little somewhat category, and we would definitely like it to be like strongly agree that the dashboard is useful. So that's also going to be something we're going to work on more closely this year, and Vahid is taking that on as a major part of his workflows. So yes, dashboard is something that came up in the research, and there's more detailed information about that in the report itself.
Great. We also are getting another question regarding the idea of using a unified syllabi for education programs. What were the perceptions regarding that in the report?
We didn't ask any questions regarding a unified syllabi. This is really difficult when you think that our education programs are both global and at different levels in the education sector. As an educator myself, I don't think that a unified syllabi would be something I would use as an educator, because my classroom needs are not the needs of another classroom. So more what we can provide are best practices and case studies and that kind of support. And we can provide training, and we can probably provide ideas for lesson plans and curriculum like other organizations do, and especially in the tech industry. But I would not prescribe one syllabi to be effective for everyone's needs.
If I may add something here, I think part of the value of case studies, and this is why we want to engage program leaders in documenting their practices through case studies, is that case studies really bring forward the peculiarity or the particular details of why a program works in a specific context. And they serve a purpose of inspiring others who might identify with a context that is not theirs, but is similar to theirs, and may feel encouraged to try a specific model or program approach.
Thank you, Maria. And I think that's another reason why you should be encouraged to please work with us to write case studies this year. Some of you listening are probably also doing GLAM projects. So myself and Alex Stinson, we're both facilitating this case studies call for campaign to get more of them and more diverse and representative case studies from around the world. So please come to the clinics if you see them, come to the virtual clinics when we start having those. Or if you feel ready, just write your case study.
Galib, do you have another question?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes.
I want to mention about one thing that sometimes we need to provide some specific support to the other communities. Like I'm in Bangladesh. Last conference in ICL, I have met someone from Sri Lanka. He's a university professor. So he mentioned about something that I need the education team support to introduce Wikipedia into my university. Later, I have contact to him, and after that, in their university, they have arranged a wiki club and invoked their economics and English department students to Wikipedia. But sometimes, frequently, I have given an email that they don't know how to start the program. Like I am an experienced Wikimedian, or I have 2 or 3 year experience to edit in Wikipedia or the others Wikimedia movement program, but they are not expert on it. So sometimes they need offline and online support. So we should we create a large support team to support them, to the newcomers? That's my question.
Thank you for that question, Galib. I think that this was something that was more prevalent when before the Collab became the user group. So we're kind of in a limbo period right now. I don't know, Vahid, would you like to articulate more about where the user group is now? Because I think this is the kind of support where it was peer-to-peer, there was mentoring involved, it was more scalable because obviously 3 people, we cannot support every single person in the entire world to implement an education program in their classroom, but we can provide tools and resources and sometimes in-person support and sometimes direct support, but we can't do everything for everyone all the time. So that's this question of like, where is our time best spent? And I think one of the things is just getting involved with other affiliates and encouraging them to get involved with education programs. For example, Galib, in this case, you said the individual in Sri Lanka needs in-person support. So if we could put you in contact with others in the region, maybe you have more capacity to do that kind of support. So I think this is a good point. Something we can improve upon is connecting people to others in a more efficient and streamlined way. But also, we are kind of in this limbo period between the Collab and the user group, so there is that.
I would also add that one very clear finding of the report is that we have to improve our communication to potential partners and allies that want to work with the education program. And so one of the very clear decisions that comes out of the findings of this report is that we will definitely work on improving the portal for educators to access and look at, so that they have an easier time finding the resources they need to learn as much as they need and start working on education programs. So we want to do that, of course, in connection with the community of Wikimedians, but also provide as much content as is useful to educators so that they can work on their own and in connection with the community on creating educational programs that are a good fit, as Nicole mentioned, for their own context, their own classrooms, their own opportunities. Dumi has another question. What is the impact of other organizations such as WikiEdu on the perception of the education team? I'm not sure I understand the question completely, Dumi. Could you maybe express it in a different way?
Dumi, you're muted. Do you want to unmute yourself and maybe clarify the question?
Oh, maybe Dumi, you're referring to the WikiEdu Foundation, which works in the US and Canada, and how it might be confusing for some people. And actually, we can mention that, yes, indeed, from time to time, we do get emails from people that are trying to contact the education program at the Wikimedia Foundation, but have an easier time finding WikiEdu Foundation. And that has been a source of confusions. I don't know, Nicole, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, we didn't actually focus specifically on this in the research, but it was more that we know this is happening, and so how can we improve our branding? We definitely need to differentiate because a lot of our branding is, I don't know the right word that I want to use for it, but it's like leftover from previous iterations of what the education team at the foundation were doing, and so it looks very similar to WikiEdu's branding. And not that it's a bad thing to be confused with them or one another, but it's just inefficient. It doesn't get people where they need to be as fast as they need to be there. But additionally, we found through the research that our branding, it's not inspiring. It's not representative of what we do. So actually, I think that WikiEdu can probably also learn from what we found out about our branding, since their branding is kind of similar. But we did find that we need to improve our branding and materials, and we'll be doing that this year going forward.
And I would add that part of the process, of course, we'll be discussing this new branding approach with the community. But it's definitely something that the education team at WMF will lead in conjunction with the community, of course. All right. So please go ahead if you have a question.
Oh, hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I was actually reading it yesterday, and I love the questions that were put there. It looks like this is a team that's looking inward and finding ways of getting better. I know I asked this question to Ty during all hands on WikiEdu and other things, but I'm glad that you guys are thinking about it as well, because one of the things I've always thought is this is one team that really should be on the forefront. It should be very easy for volunteers to know what you guys are doing and also to get in touch with you. So I sometimes worry about visibility erosion when there are other THEMOGs seemingly doing something similar. So perhaps rebranding is a very good idea to go forward with that. And I'm glad there were other questions as well that that show there is good perception and a good visibility with affiliates in particular, because they are the ones who do the work. So I'm very happy about that. Thanks for the report.
We have one question from the chat on YouTube. Edward is asking, what would you say is the biggest change that will happen as a result of the survey? And what do you see is the biggest change to the team's ongoing support?
Probably the biggest change that you will see will be the revision of our portal and branding materials. That will be something very visible that you will see. Can you say that the second part of the question again?
Yeah, the second part is, what do you see is the biggest change to the team's ongoing support?
I'm not quite sure what that means. The ongoing support to the community, or the ongoing support. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we need. I mean, this isn't something. What we have said in the recommendations is that we will look at our scope and our workflows and see how we can improve there and how we can be more efficient. I think for me personally, I want to be more efficient in how I support the community to implement education programs at scale around the world. So that's why I'm trying to look at how I provide that support and implement office hours and implement ways that I can help program leaders to sustain the learning they get at learning days, for example. So, and then we need to look at also how we facilitate mentorship and this kind of stuff. There isn't really an articulate, because we just did this research and we're just looking at the findings and just seeing how we can improve in this way. You'll probably get more information further down the line, but what we do know is that we do need to look at how we provide that support and how we can be more efficient in how we provide that support.
The only thing I would add to that is I think the findings will really help us prioritize, because I think we've known for a while that the portal needs improvement, but it's starkly apparent that would be maybe the #1 priority coming out of this research, is that's where effort needs to be really invested in the next year. So right now, as we're annual planning, we're really prioritizing that work. So that might be the visible thing that Nicole was talking about. And we're also thinking, how do we still continue to support our community at scale? So that's the less visible thing that might be a change to how we support.
Justice has a question regarding, let's say, the perceptions that came out of Africa regarding the education program. I don't know if we had regionalized findings, Nicole, from the reports.
No, actually, we were looking more at stakeholder groups rather than regions. We did have respondents from Africa, but because it wasn't required that you state your country of origin, it wouldn't be efficient to look at them regionally. But that is something maybe we can look at going forward, is are there specific needs in specific regions? And how do we best communicate to those stakeholders in those regions? But I think that is separate research, and we were already trying to tick a lot of boxes with this one survey, maybe too many. So we do need to look at that. That's a very fair question, and perhaps we can put that on the agenda for something we can do in the short term.
So I wanted to add that we encourage community members to also run their own surveys, and we can give support in that area as well. So if you would like to do a similar research in your region, we have a survey specialist, Edward Galvez. And also, I mean, I don't want to promise for any of you, Nicole, Ty, or Fahid, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there that if you're interested in doing this, we support research and data-driven activities.
Yeah, it might be fun to see what, with Indaba coming up, with the regional gathering, it might be interesting to see what kind of research questions the regional community would have as a whole. And if education is part of it, we'd love to participate.
Okay, so I think we're going to go with the final question from Galib regarding the possibility of starting Wiki Education Ambassador programs all around the world. Do we have any findings in the report regarding that?
We don't have any findings in the report regarding that. That's an interesting idea. We can definitely note it. But this was more about our branding and materials rather and support to our stakeholders rather than looking at specific programmatic activities. So thank you for that suggestion. We'll definitely keep it in mind. And I think we are at time. So I would first like to thank you to everyone who came to our presentation and who read the report and who supported the report through translating or helping us with the survey question design. And I would like to also thank Maria for helping with the design of the PDF version of the report. There are many, many people to thank, but we're really grateful to everyone who helped us with this. It was an effort for sure. And please keep a lookout for what we're going to be doing going forward. So you can read the newsletter, it's monthly. You can join our Facebook group. You can follow us on Twitter. We also have a mailing list that you can sign up for. So keep us on your radar. We definitely need to improve how we communicate, and these are the tools that we have at the moment. So please keep in touch, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.